I'm very happy to welcome you to tonight's performance in the name of the Goethe-Institut and its partners. It's a performance by Vanessa Ramos-Velasquez called Digital Anthropophagie and the Anthropophagic Re-Manifesto in the digital era. And if you think of Anthropophagie, what do you think of? You think of Brazil, you think of the Portuguese arriving and some cannibals, some indigenous cannibals eating up some of the Portuguese. Or was it the other way around? Were the Portuguese eating up the cannibals? I don't remember. But what is really peculiar with Brazilian history is that the question who is a colonizer and who is colonized is not so clear. When Napoleon was threatening Portugal, the Portuguese court left for Brazil in 1806, and the Portuguese crown established itself in Rio de Janeiro. And suddenly the colony became the motherland. And when the war was over, they didn't want to go back to Portugal. And eventually they had to go back 5 years later. But Dom João left his son in Brazil, Dom Pedro, and he established his own kingdom in Brazil. So the question, who is the motherland, or there we have a colony that became a motherland or ate up the motherland. It's quite peculiar with Brazil. And this is a country where Oswaldo de Andrade in 1928 writes the Anthropophagic Manifesto. Are you familiar with Anthropophagie? It's quite easy to explain. You choose your prey, of course, human, and then you eat, you digest according to your own metabolism, and then what you shit out, of course, is new. It's really new. So this is Anthropophagie, very shortly explained. And now this all becomes, of course, quite different if what you eat is not analog, is not human, but is digital. So here comes Vanessa and talks about anthropophagie in the digital age, and talks about the metabolism of information. And we will get this now. I just want to make one other point. I think today is a very special day to have this performance, because anthropophagie and this remixing, the sampling and shitting out in a different way, maybe this day will be in German history remembered as a day of anthropophagie, so to say. If you read the papers today, the German Constitutional Court ruled that Moses Pelham wins against Kraftwerk and rightfully may remix some sounds of Kraftwerk. So rapping, of course, is anthropophagie. And now I have talked enough. I just want to say who is Vanessa Ramos-Velasquez. She is born in Brazil. She grew up in the United States. She lives in Berlin and in London. And in 2011, she was awarded for the show you see tonight, but of course it was different. It has changed. She was awarded at the Transmediale 11 in Berlin the Wilhelm Flusser Theory Award. And she is a multidisciplinary researcher. She is a media artist. She started as a VJ and DJ, and her DJ sessions are known to take about 6 hours. So be prepared. For breakfast we meet again, and then you make your choice, be it cannibalistic or not. Here is Vanessa Ramos-Velasquez. Please enjoy the show.
Welcome to Digital Anthropophagy and the Anthropophagic Re-Manifesto for the Digital Age. Introduction. Anthropophagy. Anthropos, human being, phagin, to eat. Main definitions. 1. Cannibalism as the eating of human flesh by a human or humans. 2. Self-cannibalism as the eating of one's own flesh. 3. Eucharist, the ceremonial eating of the body of Jesus as wine and bread. In my view, these forms of cannibalism have transmutated into a new form, which I would like to propose as digital anthropophagy, meaning, 1. All the aforementioned anthropophagic practices, if done virtually, for example, with the aid of computers, social online networking, and other digital devices, or if executed in reality but facilitated digitally. 2. A new paradigm of input-output models generated via the internet. 3. A new practice of cultural consumption involving a technological mediation for input, both the feeding and the being fed, digestion, and output. The background of my digital anthropophagy theory comes from the fair use conundrum of the information age. One of my own art practices is to create films from found footage and openly exposed media online. I metabolize these materials into new contexts. In the creative process of this practice, in the age of the internet-worked information society as the producer of culture, also engaged in remixing, offering a rich self-serving online buffet, I often thought of the anthropophagic practices of some Brazilian indigenous tribes when they came into contact with their colonizers. The indigenous cannibal honorably eats the foreign in order to incorporate his strength, experiences, and qualities, and to see through the cannibalized foreigner's eyes. But I find that in today's digital culture, we unceremoniously consume the world around us in a globalized structure, thus quickly acquiring worldly references and spitting them out in a personal but also somewhat homogenized way. We have thus become both the cannibal and the cannibalized because of the wide and immediate access to information and the incredible reduction of time it now takes to consume that wide available culture. It no longer takes a passive person watching the ships arriving on the shore in order to consume what they might bring aboard, and conversely, for the colonizer in those ships to take away the riches they discover in faraway lands. Over 500 years later, that exchange has now become cross-pollinated and more equal, and happening in an inhuman speed cycle. And the paradigm of power acquisition has now shifted from land ownership of colonies to ownership of information and creative property, especially engendered by the virtual world. Note, the term virtual underestimates and trivializes the events and culture generated online. When I use the term in this text, it is only to quickly connect to the concept of online culture as a basis when talking about the online world. Yes, in my current view, the term alternate reality is a lot more appropriate to describe the online realm with all its very real materializations and repercussions. This virtual world is started to disintegrate former imperialisms and push toward a democratization of access and freedom of use of information. And so I offer an analysis of information metabolism which drives human experiences. Background history leading to my Anthropophagic Re-Manifesto for the Digital Age. In 1928, a Brazilian modernist author, Oswald de Andrade, wrote the Manifesto Anthropófago, the Cannibal Manifesto. It was an assertion of the unique Brazilian voice in the emerging modern time, away from clichés of colonialism, while unapologetically metabolizing outside references from the first world. Over 100 years since Brazil's independence from Portugal, the moment of transformation had come to devour outside artistic influences from Europe and to finally incorporate all their developments useful to Brazilian culture, while seeking the Brazilian modern identity, strength, and unique vision. It was as much a dictum against the colonizer's power as it was a criticism of the colonized people's hunger for what's not their own. My manifesto poem offers a new take on the original manifesto, and I call it a re-manifesto, alluding not only to remix culture, but also to a reassertion of previously colonized cultures into the new dynamics of context of cultural influence in the digital era. My digital anthropophagy theory, likewise, seeks to update that anthropophagic practice of cultural cannibalism to the digital age, proposing that the virtual world is the new frontier and anyone can be a colonizer. In my Anthropophagic Re-Manifesto, I expose that the allure, the attraction of the other, is mutual and that it serves to form a symbiotic relationship that feeds both peoples. The concept of the exotic is a two-way road, for if one has never seen the other before, their mutual discovery is of equal impact, and a curiosity to consume that newfound exoticism is occurring on both sides. The question, thus, is not about the symbiosis itself, but about the degree of positive influences and acculturation, especially in the era of an ongoing digital revolution. Of course, the great line dividing this equality in colonial times was an economic one. The colonizer, upon seeing a newfound land, sees accumulation of assets, while the found people just see unknown people or even divinities. That very innocence of the golden age is the exotic raw material that so many in the first world seek. But be aware, as even in that innocence lies the cannibal spirit. And since there is no more land to discover, the colonizer has now become the entrepreneur who seeks to conquer the virtual landscapes of ones and zeros. But now the innocent is born with a much larger capacity to understand and dominate that virtual world. So now the entrepreneur is forced to invite whom he or she sees as the cannibals into the game in order to keep the barbarians at the gate. And these little barbarians will grow up to be the entrepreneurs of tomorrow in an endless cycle of digital evolution. Thusly, anyone will be a colonizer, except this time nothing is done by imposition because the networked community, functioning as a universal brain, decides what gets served up, and consequently, what becomes consumable in this natural entropic filtering process. My manifesto poem is therefore a new take on the original Manifesto Anthropophago. It is but a glimpse through a prism reflecting how the indigenous anthropophagic cannibalist practice resonates to today's so-called civilized and modern society, materializing as cannibalistic remix culture, spanning the entire world in an age where virtually all colonies have proclaimed their independence. It's the new world order. Anyone can choose to be either the colonizer or the colonized. And why not both? Digital anthropophagy. Overview of cultural cannibalism from tribal origins to today's cultural practices through a mashup of biological, philosophical, social, economic, and artistic perspectives. The law of man was meant to separate and elevate us from the so-called savages and create a civilization by teaching man to consume and interact within guidelines. Without laws, there would be chaos because humans are animals too. And the uncivilized impetus is always lurking in the corner, unencumbered by governance of any kind, except survival of the fittest. But whereas these savages are the nude ones living deep in the isolated jungles, or wearing suit and ties in a skyscraper office, or a tech-savvy kid in the bedroom, all have the tribal impetus to surpass their own limitations by reaching outside of the self and assimilating and acquiring the qualities of the other. All of them engage in rituals to satisfy their hunger and curiosity, and then can only be done by devouring the world around them. As philosopher Merleau-Ponty stated, we perceive the world through our bodies. We are embodied subjects involved in existence. Digestive process of cannibalization, original recyclers and remixers. The incorporation and transfiguration belongs to a biosynthetic process that metabolizes the raw ingested material, generating something else. From ancient Greek philosophy, Anaxagoras, year 450 BC, nothing is born or perishes, but already existing things combine, then separate anew. From modern chemistry, Lavoisier's law of conservation of mass, year 1789. In nature, nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, everything is transformed. In a chemical biological reaction, the mass conserves itself. Atoms may move from one molecule to another, but are never created or destroyed. They only rearrange themselves. From art, Oswald de Andrade, the author of the original Anthropophagic Manifesto, year 1928. Only the anthropophagy unites us, socially, economically, philosophically. I am only interested in what is not mine. Law of man, law of the cannibal. From modern philosophy, Wilhelm Flusser, year 1984. I press a certain key, and the whole human history appears on screen. If I don't like that history, I can modify it freely by pressing another key. I modify history nearer to the heart's desire. Other keys allow me to recombine these universes and perhaps even change them. All information accumulated by humanity are at my disposal to be altered by me. So I think the probability of the improbable, that is, inventing something truly new, as if created in a vacuum, is nearly impossible. There is no anechoic chamber of thought. Outside influences are always pouring into us. We are what we are exposed to. We are what we eat. We are what we output. And it is the composite of our DNA, social environment, and free will that determine what we say yes or no to when remixing ourselves with the world. Thoughts remix pre-existing ideas into hopefully new ones. And it's most probable that only new technology generating new creative processes, or the combination of old and new, can lead to something newer than what is generated with the creative power of the mind, with the current existing tools and processes of creation and execution. We are born into this world with only our DNA, our basic operating system. Everything else that makes that system and hardware function in society is acquired through our exposition to the world. So, if we are incentivized to consume everything and each other, these installed experiences and applications will self-run. That's the phenomenology of a human being, and even more so in the digital age. Digestive process of cannibalization in human behavior, active and reactive agents. Humans need to eat and feed their egos. Humans are curious, want to communicate, want to interact with others, want to acquire something for themselves. It's a feeding frenzy of the senses, and in order for that symbiosis of a healthy digital ecosystem to exist, digital inclusion and net neutrality are of extreme importance for everyone to win in the exchange, be it the individual, the corporations, the institutions, or governments. In the natural world, the freshest something is, the higher the nutrients. And the essence that we all take from the internet-worked society is no longer just to satisfy restore, and protect the physical body. In the remote, mediated information society as a new form of civilization, this ritual constitutes a new form of cannibalism, a virtual integration of someone else's essence, but real all the same, because the acculturation resulting from the interaction is still taking place and quite strongly connecting everyone, everywhere, all the time, and immediately. The philosopher of communication and artistic production and phenomenologist Willem Flusser envisioned a further fantastic dynamic of Marshall McLuhan's cosmic media and global village as an ant colony, where future generations will have atrophied bodies and bigger heads and constitute a cosmic collective brain. But what if the actual futuristic change is the attaining of a transcendental power, a new light that will propel us into the next revolution, where we surpass the limitations of greed, become more ethical, and yes, that includes coming up with ways to ensure that people working with ideas can be rewarded for their work fairly, so that we can continue to feed one another. Cultural imperialism and technical barbarism lead to a reaction to democratize. According to German historian and philosopher Oswald Spengler, the encroached masses revolt against dominant, technologically complex societies, and this leads to egalitarianism and a break from old rules. My thought is that the colonialist mindset of imposition by slavery and organized mass homicide are no longer economically advantageous. It is preferable now to invite all tribes to participate by creating social network accounts, signing on to crowdsourcing, sharing their information to be known, consumed, be consumed, and everyone wins. No one needs to be afraid of the other anymore, as the internet-worked society is also a transparent society. The phenomenon of the general public becoming producers of culture is the driving force behind the dismantling of dominant cultures as colonizer and dictators of mass culture. The dematerialization of borders in the virtual world allows the acculturation process to take place without the former victimization of the suppressed cultures or even of a slave culture. Sure, we cannot ignore some of the negatives in the background machinery making all this possible. Walter Benjamin, the great philosopher, said it best: the record of civilization is also a record of barbarism. If at the end of the day, the same person in the assembly lines in Asia making digital gadgets for $1 a day can access the same gadgets he or she is producing to create their own revolutions, is there a sort of equality unimaginable, even decades ago? Acculturation models according to a proposed polymorphous cannibalist practice. Following the basic concept that acculturation is the process by which the aggregation of peoples is changed from a more mechanical mixture into a chemical compound, we can arrive at a modern-day definition which derives from our digitization, leading to an amalgamation of our collective existence, past, present, and future. We are able to cannibalize each other across every imaginable spectrum, operating in a medium that allows us to transcend politics, religion, social status, family formation, age, values, beliefs. It's a free-for-all with the potential to fulfill every imaginable consumption desire. In 1898, W.J. McGee, an anthropologist, defined acculturation to be the process of exchange and mutual improvement by which societies advance from savagery to barbarism to civilization to enlightenment. He argued that human development is essentially social and may be measured by the degree in which devices and ideas are interchanged and fertilized in the process of transfer. In other words, by the degree of acculturation. McGee offered different types of acculturation: martial acculturation, the imitation of weapons and religious symbols; marital acculturation, as a semi-antagonistic mating between groups; commercial acculturation, the exchange of goods; educational acculturation as the exchange of ideas and technologies of production; and I propose that digital acculturation is the exchange, input-output, of all of the above via cross-cultural pollination over the World Wide Web. For the longest time, third world countries have become the exotic raw material upon which the jaded palates of the first world feed, and hence it appears that the comfort and sustenance of both masses and elite in the Western world depend cannibalistically on the disinheritance and or assimilation of the once colonized masses. This quote is from Fiona R. Barnes, Resisting Cultural Cannibalism, Oppositional Narratives, in Michelle Cliff's No Telephone to Heaven. However, because of the current high level of dissemination of information leading to a global, democratic, transparent society, the exoticism and the search for it has become a multi-way road. And according to the dismantling of previous cultural imperialistic models, culture is no longer just served from the top down, as in mass culture, but horizontally, as a global internetworked, democratized village. Challenge: human nature reacting to widespread availability of information and culture. Uncontrollable hunger to consume what's available and facility of public as producer of culture, leading to an uncontrollable media usage in the form of appropriation and reappropriation, memes as an example. Cycles of consumption, media bombardment. Consumer-driven markets instigate people to live in a state of perpetual desire to acquire. Advertisements constantly bombard us with visual, sound, scents, oral satisfactors, tactile titillators, all vying to enter our five senses. But these instigators of desire either deny us or want to control our ultimate satisfaction, our desire of self-expression, to apply everything that somehow entered into our bodies and became part of our individual or collective experience, and to output what we have incorporated into our being. That self-expression is a consequence of the inevitable metabolism resulting from processing all the information. Appropriation: the individual output of recombined information molecules that get served up as a remixed form through the individual process of metabolizing the raw material. It generally only leads to authorship issues and financial disputes when the cannibal, the author of the new work, is making money from his or her creation containing someone else's work or parts of that work. Some initiatives from owners of media content allow the public to use their offerings, but the problem is always the partial availability of that content, resulting in limited choices. Their libraries are never complete, and thus the public will resort to any means to get what they want in order to fulfill their impetus of self-expression. Reappropriation: uncontrollable phenomenon that permeates interactive digital culture. Ideas are shared, which in turn generates a global string with endless possibilities, which end up on Google and YouTube perpetually. These outputs may well already be metabolized from self and return to self as a transmutated meme or the byproduct of someone else's output. The point is, cannibals cannibalize other cannibals in an endless cycle. But reappropriation and appropriation are not exclusive of the digital age. There have been many prominent examples of those who practiced it way before this era. Walt Disney, Andy Warhol, William S. Burroughs, Dadaists. And perhaps the best appropriation of all in digital culture, Steve Jobs borrowing the mouse from Xerox, which effectively put the R in digital revolution, moving us from text-based input-output geekdom toward the full cybernetic interaction of the pictorial multiplex experience. Point and click, just like the camera. The new technocracy. Today, kids are born with digital inputs and outputs practically attached to their fingertips. They are transhuman experts in codifying, decodifying, and recodifying the world without borders that surrounds them. This digital world of ones and zeros are natural to them. It's in their DNA. They grow up unaware that one must credit or pay to use media. A digital gadget does not come with a booklet on the ethics of media usage explaining copyright terms to these children. So it follows that authorship rights in the age of digital culture are quickly falling by the wayside, when everything looks free for the taking, with everyone influencing one another in a super fast pace, until no one remembers who started what, who is the gatekeeper. These tech-savvy children reject the old model and are creating new ones. It will be impossible to stop them. They are the new cannibals. The new cannibalism, to propagate our history and to secure our immortality. The original Anthropophagic Manifesto was a reaction against sophisticated and over-civilized society. But our current global state is a collusion of both primitive and sophisticated over-civilized society, where technology supersedes the so-called civilized world ethics, and children are the new technological indigenous. We are a technophonic society where simultaneous digital outputs have a brief moment of perceived clashing effects, but finally entropically merging into the totality of the massive online databank. This is a rich, cyclical stew of not to be underestimated binary ingredients. The data processing never stops. It's a hungry machine in need of food. And we too have become a hungry machine in need of food. And that food is information, food for thought, thought generating ideas, ideas generating action, actions generating change, change generating awareness of the human condition, awareness of the human condition, awakening the awareness of our own mortality, and the acknowledgement of our own mortality, generating the need to leave the marks of our passage through this life, to leave a testimony of all that we have consumed as an embodiment of our full being, and ultimately of all that we have become. No man is an island. The medium is the message, and so we log on to the social networks to share our lives with the world, and the world reacts by taking it in and remixing these outputs with their own and spitting it out as our own. We all want to bite off the apple. The search for truth and knowledge is our daily affirmation of immortality. Everyone wants to be eternal, and the future God might be Google, Facebook, or some other new thing. The mainframe memory, guardian of our brains and experiences. Long after we're gone, some form of media archive will still exist as a virtual building that houses our embodiment as human beings and producers of data, the keeper of our conscience during our passage on Earth. Considerations for a borderless, internetworked society. Treat other people's output as you would like yours to be treated. Ethical treatment of external media and soon DNA materials. Keeping in mind that imitation is still one of the highest forms of flattery, but that we have moved way past that simplistic form of content integration onto higher forms of remix culture and beyond, where everybody can potentially win. This dynamic always poses great threat if not accompanied by ethics. New technologies will always bring with them new possibilities and probabilities that cannot be stopped or reversed. How we handle this forward pressure determines the quality of our innovations and our impact on the Earth. How not to lose profit, but more importantly, how to gain new profit while improving the quality of life across all borderlines. And by profit, I don't mean just money, but all that is made possible by being internet-worked. A new gateway to a new kind of enrichment. Sharing is caring. Last chapter. The Anthropophagic Anthropocene. The earth eats itself, distorted, defaced, twisted, like a hungry, deprived beast, suffering from systemic lupus, devouring human-made novel materials, plastics and uncombined aluminum, binded to stone, forever unmovable and unchanged. The great unpacified Pacific garbage patch, stirring the slush into a vortex of microplastics, drip, drip, dripping into the cells of sea life, a new alchemy in reverse. Nature is no longer natural. We must embrace and celebrate our collective tech detritus of fast conveniences and dance to the heavens to keep the sky from collapsing to the earth. As above, so below, data, not immaterial, rises to the technosphere, its vapors raining back on us metamorphosized. The diverted river lost its way to the electrical outlet. The plant that no longer speaks cannot cure. The bird born out of a can does not know when to sing. The networks are crossed, and the constellations reveal no congruent narrative. The sun has shifted. The seasons surprise. The shaman feels confusion. Goodbye, Holocene. The Anthropocene, with our pornographic, stratigraphic dimension, has arrived with the speed of lightning, catching us off guard. May the slow science women and time-transcending pages of all native nations counteract the flash boys of Wall Street, of all the high-frequency trading oligarchies. Meanwhile, we eat the remix. Anthropophagic Re-Manifesto for the Digital Age. Who discovered whom? Was it the Portuguese discovering native Brazilians just because of the effort in building the caravels, setting them onto the ocean, and embarking on the long trip? Why not the other way around? Just because the indigenous people were in a passive position of merely having their eyes open and seeing the foreigners arrive? Who ate whom? Since your discovery, you have taken our colors to brighten with a brilliant red your ecclesiastics and royals, while we contagiated you with our tireless smiles. Now let us taste you in your new garments. We'd like to see you through your engorged eyes and incorporate your assimilated happiness. It's too late to turn back and contest it. Let's accept the past, but turn the table onto the future. We ate everything and swallowed it dry, but now may we spit it out with a lot of flavor to make good for the foreigners' eyes and leave them hypnotized with so much hunger. Our pau-brasil wood was taken away. We were left with just a name, Brazil, while getting stuck with a stick. So cover your assets, because now it's our turn at the bat. Pindorama is no longer, never no going back. Hail to the technologic indigenous of the digital revolution who wants more than a whistleblower toy. We want more than your whites and blacks brought from faraway lands. Give us thine colorful data from the virtual worlds, but we want to find ourselves without getting lost in the depths of the jungles yet to be disclosed. Primitive now is almost gone, but maybe there are some cans and bottles in the burned bushes. Everything has been discovered and uncovered. Will we have to revert to being children, content with our pre-logic, or will we be satisfied with the logic shop of forgotten revolutions of each year as new versions dictate? To whom will the contemporary primal scream belong? Hail to innocence and purity. May they never lose themselves in the postmodern emptiness of the matrix, the new belly button of the world. Hail to the ignorance of the infant unknown to Pixeland. This time, what will the rich contribution of all mistakes be? Hail to the anthropicalism of all the Souths. Hail to the laptop, the true talisman of happiness? If someone presses the delete key, will history be erased? Oh, good old times, those of the red telephone. It was just one button of reserved access, limited to just one or two crazies. Now every loony has one. So let's blow those whistles at all the cabaret Voltaires at every street corner. The mind sweatshop does not stop. The blood, sweat, and tears run infinitum, while the football, carnival, coffee, booze, and brown-skinned beauties leave everything neon bright and dazzling. The little boat floats at sunset as night falls, and your moon fights for space with our sun. Our neo-concretism is your concretism. Let's make everything right, left, forward, or backward. Doesn't matter. Everything is unisex, one size fits all, made in China, imported and exported until it hurts. Our cannibalism is your income source and pride in feeding us. Your trash is our treasure, which we resell to you for twice the price. Our poverty is your window through which you feed your curiosity. Therefore, do not complain who is using whom or who is eating whom. This is a two-way road, and no one needs to get stuck in it. In nature, nothing is created, nothing is destroyed. Everything is transformed. And now, in the new era, where all are ones and zeros, make your own mathematics and mixture. See what comes out of the anthropologic blender, which really has no logic. Invention is the mother of necessity. Transfiguration is a reaction of existence. Manifestation is the subversion of learned realities in action. Cor inversum in se ipsum. Enjoy and share. Enjoy and share. Enjoy and share. Thank you.